The zipper was stiff, resistant, almost resentful. Anna Melnick knelt beside the battered maroon suitcase with the stubborn zipper, pressing her weight against it as if she could persuade it open through willpower alone. It groaned like a tired old man who had seen too much, just like her. At 39, Anna wasn't old, not by the measure of years, but by the measure of time lived. Time endured, time mourned, and there had been so much mourning. She sat on the cold wooden floor of her one-room apartment in Kiev, the quiet hum of the refrigerator blending with the ticking clock and the low hiss of wind slipping through her crooked window. Outside, Ukraine trembled in economic uncertainty, but inside, her world was silent, suspended in the delicate stillness of a choice she couldn't undo. The suitcase finally cracked open. Inside, 2 modest dresses, 1 thick wool coat, 3 pairs of underwear, faded family photos, and a small silver cross her mother had given her the night before she died. She touched it gently, the cool metal grounding her like the touch of a memory. This was all she was taking with her. This and a passport, and a one-way ticket to Montana. She wasn't running from something. She was running toward the only thing she still dared to hope for: love. 2 months earlier, the agency's website hadn't changed in years. The colors were outdated, the fonts comically stiff, like a brochure left out in the sun too long. But the men on the other end were real. So real, they sent plane tickets and photos and letters. Some were lonely, some arrogant, some desperate, and some pretended to be kind. John Matthews seemed like the latter. 52 years old, divorced, cattle rancher from western Montana. In his emails, he was charming in a dry, fatherly way. "I need a strong woman, not a girl," he wrote once. "Someone who understands what real life means." Anna had read that sentence over and over, like a prayer. Someone who understands. Her life had been spent in understanding. She understood how to care for her bedridden father when she was 14. She understood how to survive after he died. She understood how to cook, clean, care, and not complain. She understood how to work 12 hours in a textile factory and come home to loneliness that sat like a ghost in her chest. She was not beautiful by commercial standards, but there was something sacred in her face. Deep brown eyes that looked older than her age. Hands that moved with elegance even in exhaustion. She carried herself with a kind of sorrow that made people soften around her. John said he liked that about her. The flight. Anna stood at gate 46 in Warsaw, clutching her travel documents with trembling fingers. Her palms were damp. She hadn't flown in years. Her heart beat in hard, uneven thuds, not just from nerves, but from the unknown. The last time she crossed a border, it was by train with a suitcase full of oranges for her dying aunt in Moldova. Now, she crossed a border to change her life. There were moments on the plane when she dreamed with her eyes open. She saw herself walking through snow with a red scarf around her neck, John beside her, smiling. She imagined a kitchen filled with the smell of cinnamon and fresh bread, a man's arm around her waist, laughter, a dog sleeping at her feet. She allowed herself to believe that she could be loved. The arrival. Bozeman, Montana was white with snow and smelled like pine and diesel fuel. The airport was small, quiet. It looked more like a ski lodge than a port of international futures. Anna stepped through the sliding glass doors and scanned the faces. Her suitcase rattled behind her like a tail. And then she saw him. John, just like the photo. Tall, grizzled, wearing a leather jacket and cowboy hat. He looked like the Marlboro Man with softer eyes. But he wasn't smiling. His mouth was a tight line. His eyes scanned her with clinical detachment. "Anna," he asked. She nodded, hopeful. "Yes. Hello. I'm—" He raised a hand, silencing her. His face tightened. "You're older than I expected." The words sliced through her like a paper cut to the soul. "Small but bleeding." "I told you my age," she whispered. "I never lied." I know," he muttered, rubbing the back of his neck. "But your pictures, they were from a while back." She flushed. They were recent. She just didn't know how to Photoshop out the years like the younger women did. John glanced toward the exit. "Look, I'm sorry, but I was kind of hoping for someone a bit younger. Maybe this was a mistake." He didn't yell. He didn't curse. He just turned and walked away, alone in America, Anna stood in the airport vestibule, frozen in place. The automatic doors opened and closed behind her, wind brushing snowflakes in her face. A family passed by laughing. A girl tugged on her mother's sleeve. Someone called out a name over the PA. But Anna was alone. She had no phone plan, no friends, no money to fly home. She could barely breathe through the sting in her throat. Her suitcase sat beside her like a forgotten memory. The overhead lights flickered. She whispered to herself in Ukrainian, "Don't cry, don't cry." But her body betrayed her. Tears spilled, hot and humiliating. Hours later, she found a seat on a bench near the rental car desk and sat, unmoving, for nearly 3 hours. Her thoughts spiraled. Where will I sleep? How will I eat? Why did he lie? A janitor named Rose eventually offered her a coffee and a phone charger. Anna clung to the coffee like it was an anchor in the ocean. Need a place to stay? Rose asked gently. Anna nodded, unable to speak. Rose didn't ask questions. She made a call. That night, Anna found herself in a spare bedroom in a stranger's home. An elderly woman named Maggie, who took her in for the night. The room smelled like lavender and dust. A quilt covered the bed, hand-stitched. The walls held photos of someone else's grandchildren. The house creaked with stories Anna would never know. She lay down and stared at the ceiling. And for the first time since she left home, she allowed herself to ask, what if love was never meant for me? What if this was all a mistake? She turned her head to the window, where snow fell silently outside. And somewhere, deep beneath the ache in her chest, something small and warm flickered. Not hope, but defiance. Would you like me to continue with Chapter 2? The Man with the Quiet Hands? That's where Anna meets the man who changes everything, but not in the way she expects. Absolutely. Here's the next deeply immersive and emotionally rich chapter. The morning came like an apology, soft, golden, and hesitant. Anna awoke in a bed that wasn't hers, in a home that had no memory of her. For a few suspended seconds, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came back with the weight of a wave crashing over her. The rejection, the airport, the cold, the look in John's eyes, like she was a package delivered to the wrong address. She sat up slowly, running her hands over the quilt. It was worn, but lovingly so. Hand-stitched roses danced in faded loops, and a thread whispered of years, maybe decades, of someone's care. She pressed her palm against one of the roses as if it could absorb some of that love and stitch it into her. There was a knock at the door. "Coffee's hot, sweetheart," Maggie called gently. "I made you eggs. Come when you're ready." In the kitchen. Maggie's kitchen looked like it belonged in a country magazine. Yellow floral wallpaper, a cat-shaped cookie jar, and sunlight streaming through lace curtains. Anna sat at the table with trembling hands, silently taking the mug Maggie offered. "You sleep at all?" Maggie asked, settling into the chair across from her. "A little." Her voice was thin, like parchment. Maggie didn't press. She buttered toast, sliced oranges, let silence fill the room like warm steam. Only after several minutes did she speak. "Rose told me what happened. That man, John, he's a fool." Anna blinked. "Maybe I am too." Maggie gave her a long, grandmotherly look. "No, honey, you're a woman who believed. That's not foolish. That's brave." Anna's throat ached. "Do you have somewhere to go?" Maggie asked. Anna hesitated. "No." Maggie nodded, as if she already knew. "Then, you can stay here a few days. My grandson's coming by later. Maybe he'll know someone looking for help." Later that day, his name was Caleb Shaw. The first thing Anna noticed was his silence, not the awkward kind, but the kind that wrapped itself around you gently. He had the look of someone who spent more time with animals than people. Strong shoulders, calloused hands, sun-bronzed skin. He wore worn jeans and boots coated in thin dust, and he smelled faintly of cedar and horses. When Maggie introduced them, Anna stood awkwardly, unsure whether to shake his hand or nod. Caleb extended his hand first, rough, warm, steady. "I'm Caleb," he said simply. His voice was low, but not unfriendly. It had a gentleness that surprised her. "Anna," she replied, her accent curling softly around the vowels. Maggie stepped in. "She needs work." And Maybe something to do while she gets her feet under her. You said you needed help in the stables. Caleb raised an eyebrow. With the horses? Anna flushed. I don't know anything about horses. That's okay, Caleb said. I need someone who can feed, clean, sweep. You okay with hard work? She looked him dead in the eyes. I've done nothing but hard work my whole life. The ranch. Caleb's ranch was 15 minutes from Maggie's house, surrounded by frostbitten trees and hills that stretched like sleeping giants. The stables were long and weather-worn, but solid. The horses, 6 in total, greeted Anna with curious eyes and steaming breaths in the winter air. She was terrified of them. They were majestic, powerful, alive, but she was determined. Every task Caleb gave her, scooping hay, scrubbing buckets, brushing mainies, she did with silent dedication. He didn't hover or condescend. He showed her once, then let her try. He never raised his voice, never rushed her. And over time, Anna noticed something else. He listened. When she spoke, nervously, brokenly, he listened with the kind of focus that felt like shelter. When she was quiet, he let her be quiet. He didn't ask about the man at the airport. He didn't pity her. He simply made space for her. And to a woman who had spent most of her life trying to shrink herself, that space felt like air. 2 weeks later, Anna moved into the small guest cabin on the edge of Caleb's property. It was modest, a bed, a bathroom, a kettle, but it was hers. Her own key, her own roof, her own air. Every morning, she rose before the sun and walked to the stables, boots crunching over frost. She learned the horses' names: Scout, Juniper, Whiskey, Bell. She learned which one liked her ears scratched, which one hated loud noises. And she learned about Caleb. He had once been married. Long ago, she left him after the stillbirth of their first child. He never remarried, never even dated. People carry grief differently, he said once, leaning on a rake. She carried hers out the door. Anna understood that kind of grief, the kind that doesn't leave a bruise but changes your bones. One evening, they sat on the porch of the main house, sharing a bowl of stew. Why Montana? Caleb asked. I didn't choose Montana, she said quietly. I chose not to die alone. Caleb didn't answer right away. You're not alone now. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't romance. It was a truth, and Anna felt it settle into her chest like heat. The turning point. Late one evening, during a snowstorm, one of the horses, Bell, went into labor. The power flickered. Wind howled. Caleb and Anna worked side by side in the stable for hours, hands raw and frozen, sweat clinging to their skin like steam. The foal was born just before midnight. Anna cradled its head as it took its first breath, eyes wide with wonder. Her face was streaked with tears she didn't remember shedding. When she looked up, Caleb was watching her. Not with desire, not with pity, with awe. That night, back in her cabin, Anna opened her suitcase. She took out the silver cross her mother had given her. She placed it on the windowsill. She was not the same woman who arrived at that airport. Something inside her had begun to stitch back together. And the man with the quiet hands? He was not John. He didn't promise love. He offered presents. And sometimes, that's the soil where love begins. Would you like me to continue with Chapter 3, A Heart That Learned to Bloom? That's where Anna must face a decision. Stay or leave, and whether she deserves love after all. There was something sacred about silence when it belonged to two people who understood each other. Anna and Caleb spoke little, but in the silence between words, they built something stronger than conversation. It wasn't romance. Not yet. It wasn't flirtation, either. But it was something real, something tender. And it was growing quietly, like a flower blooming through snow. Early spring, Montana thawed slowly. Snow melted into mud. The hills sighed back to life, brushed in pale green, and the horses stretched lazily in sunlit pastures. Anna's hands grew stronger, her voice more certain, her steps less cautious. At night, in her small cabin, she would sit by the window with a mug of tea and listen to the wind pass through the trees. She began writing letters, not to send, but to remember. Letters to her younger self, letters to her mother, letters to the woman she used to be. Each word she wrote chipped away at the shame she had carried. She stopped thinking of herself as the rejected bride. She started thinking of herself as someone who had survived. One evening at the barn, Caleb was fixing a broken latch on a stall door when he looked up suddenly. "You ever think about going back?" Anna looked at him, surprised. "To Ukraine?" He nodded. She shook her head. "There's nothing there for me anymore. No family, no one left." Caleb didn't press. He nodded, eyes returning to the latch. But Anna felt a subtle shift in the air, like a question was forming that hadn't yet been asked. 2 days later, a letter arrived. From John. It had been nearly 2 months since he left her at the airport. She stood on the porch of Caleb's house, holding the envelope with trembling hands. The handwriting was jagged and familiar. Her chest tightened. "Want to open it?" Caleb asked gently. She hesitated. Later, but she read it that night, alone in her cabin, and it read like guilt disguised as kindness. "Anna, I've been thinking a lot about that day. Maybe I was too quick to judge. I was nervous, overwhelmed. I thought I wanted something else, but maybe I was wrong. If you're still in Montana, maybe we could try again? Talk. Start fresh. John." She stared at the letter for a long time. 2 months ago, she would have clung to it like a lifeline. Now, it felt like a backward step. She burned in the fireplace. Caleb didn't ask what it said, but the next morning, he handed her a fresh cup of coffee with a quiet look in his eyes that said he knew. Conflict. For the first time since arriving, Anna felt uncertain again. Not because of John, but because of what she was starting to feel. Caleb had become her anchor, her safe place, the one who listened, who never judged, who taught her to trust her own strength. She found herself lingering near him longer than necessary, watching the way his hands moved, the way he smiled only when he meant it. She was falling, but she didn't believe she was allowed to. She was a mail-order bride, a woman left at an airport, a woman with too much past and too many cracks. What man would want to inherit all her broken pieces? The confession. One evening, as they walked the fence line together beneath a lavender sky, Anna spoke first. "Why do you let me stay here, Caleb?" He paused. "What do you mean? I came here for another man. You don't owe me anything." Caleb leaned on the fence post, watching the horses graze in the distance. Then he turned to her. "You didn't come here for me, but maybe you were supposed to end up here anyway." Anna looked down. "I don't know how to be wanted. Not really. Not after everything." Caleb took a long breath. "You ever plant something too late in the season?" he asked softly. Anna looked up. "What? Sometimes it still grows. Just needs more care." He looked at her then, really looked. "You're not late, Anna. You're just beginning. The breaking point." But the next day, everything cracked. Anna received a phone call from someone back home, a friend from her old job. The textile factory had closed. Her childhood home, the one she grew up in, the one her father died in, was being demolished. She broke down in the stables, sobbing into the mane of a horse that nuzzled her like it understood. Caleb found her there, knees in straw, face streaked with salt. "I have nothing," she whispered. "That's not true," he said. She looked up, eyes wild. "You don't know what it's like to be discarded, to be invisible. You lost a wife, yes, but I've spent my whole life never being chosen." Caleb knelt beside her. "I'm choosing you now." Silence. "I can't." Anna's voice cracked. "I'm too much." "No," he said. "You're enough, and you don't have to prove anything to me." The bloom. That night, Anna didn't sleep. She stood outside her cabin, wrapped in a blanket, staring up at the stars. Montana's sky was impossibly vast, endless and humbling. And somewhere between the stars and the wind, something broke open inside her. She wasn't broken. She was becoming. And for the first time, she allowed herself to believe. She could be loved, not for who she used to be, but for who she was now. End of chapter 3. Would you like me to begin chapter 4, the Memory Cathedral, next? This is the emotional core of the story, where Anna finally confronts her past, and a turning point brings her and Caleb to a new, deeper level. Memory is not just a place. It's a cathedral we keep walking into, hoping the past won't echo too loud. Spring had nearly finished its thaw. Anna walked the ranch in light jackets now, sleeves rolled up, hands freckled with sun and earth. The frost was gone, but not the ache that still lived quietly beneath her ribs. It had softened, yes, but not vanished. Because healing isn't erasing. It's carrying the weight more easily. And sometimes, memory is the heaviest thing of all. One morning, Caleb handed her a small wooden box at breakfast. "I found this in the attic. Belonged to my grandmother. Thought you might like it." Inside the box was an old fountain pen, a few blank letters aged yellow at the edges, and a pressed sprig of lavender so fragile she could feel time on its petals. Anna ran her fingers along the paper like it was velvet. "Thank you," she whispered. But the gesture stirred something deep, something forgotten. That night, she dreamed of her mother for the first time in years. Not the bitter hospital years, but before. A blue apron, the smell of bread, her mother humming an old lullaby in a kitchen too small for two people but big enough for love. Anna woke in tears, the pen still clutched in her hand. She knew what she had to do. The journey. 3 days later, she booked a flight. "Are you sure?" Caleb asked, eyes searching hers. "I need to go back," she said. "Not to stay, but to say goodbye to the ghosts I left behind." Caleb nodded, jaw tight. "I'll drive you to the airport." She hesitated. "You don't have to." "I want to." And he did. They drove in silence, windows down, the Montana air crisp with green things. At the gate, she turned to him. "I'm not running," she said. "I just need to walk through the ruins." Caleb's eyes met hers. "I'll be here when you come out the other side." Back in Ukraine, the town was smaller than she remembered. Or maybe she had simply grown. Buildings stood half empty. The textile factory was shuttered, windows broken like teeth knocked out in a brawl with time. Her childhood home was gone, a vacant lot now, weeds pushing up through the places where memories once slept. She sat on the ground where the kitchen used to be, where her mother used to hum, where her father used to cough softly in the corner after work. She laid her hand on the soil. "I forgive you," she whispered. "All of you, even me." And the wind answered her with silence. Not absence, but peace. The cathedral. Before she left, she visited the old church. Dusty pews, candles unlit, a cathedral of memory, filled with echoes only she could hear. She lit one candle, for the girl she was. Another, for the woman she was becoming. Then she sat, eyes closed, tears running freely, not of sorrow, but of release. She stayed until the bell rang. Then she rose and walked out into the morning like someone baptized. Return. When she stepped off the plane, Caleb was there, leaning against the old pickup, arms crossed, hat low over his eyes. She smiled the second she saw him. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," he echoed. No dramatic hug, no kiss, just presence. And that meant more than grand gestures ever could. They drove home in silence again. But this time it felt different, complete. Later that night, she stood in front of Caleb's house, heart racing. "Come in," he said, holding the door open. She stepped inside, not as a guest, but as someone coming home. The conversation. Over tea, she finally said the words. "I want to say goodbye, but I realized something." Caleb looked at her. "I don't want to belong to the past anymore. I want to belong somewhere real. Somewhere now. And maybe..." She paused, breath catching. "Maybe that's here. With you." Caleb said nothing. He set down his mug. Then, slowly, gently, he reached across the table and took her hand. "You've been here for a while, Anna," he said. "You just didn't know it yet." The memory cathedral closes. That night, Anna dreamed again. But this time, it wasn't of the past. It was of wildflowers, laughter, a porch bathed in gold, Caleb beside her, horses running freely in the field. And in the dream, she wasn't a mail-order bride, or a ghost of who she used to be. She was just Anna, loved, whole, alive. Would you like me to move into Chapter 5, the Reckoning season next? It's where the world pushes back. Anna faces public judgment from the community, and Caleb must choose whether to protect her or stay safe and silent. Their love will be tested. When love begins to bloom, the world doesn't always celebrate. Sometimes it tests the roots. The land bloomed. Late spring dressed Montana in wildflowers and honey-colored sun. The fields were alive with color, the air thick with pollen and promise. Anna found herself smiling more often, speaking more freely, standing a little taller. But peace is never permanent, especially when it's earned, especially when it's real. The whispering begins. It started in the feed store. Two women by the register. Not whispering, not quite loud enough to be polite. That's her, the one Caleb took in. She's from over there, right? Not even American. Mail order. Can you believe it? Poor thing got dumped and still stayed. And now he's shacking up with her? She's not even young. Anna heard every word. She didn't flinch. Not in front of them. But her hands trembled on the steering wheel the entire drive home. Caleb found out. He came into the barn while she was brushing one of the horses. You okay? She didn't answer at first. Just kept brushing. Then, without looking up, she said, Do they hate me? Caleb's jaw clenched. They don't know you. That's not what I asked. He took the brush from her hands, set it down, and turned her toward him. People talk, Anna. They need stories to fill the silence. But this, he tapped her chest, then this isn't up for debate. She nodded, but doubt already had its claws in her. The invitation. A few days later, a local church hosted a community potluck. Caleb wanted to go. Anna didn't. I don't belong there, she said. Yes, you do. They'll stare. Then let them. Caleb. He placed a hand over hers. If we hide, they win. So she went. At the potluck. At first, it was fine. Plastic plates, red checkered tablecloths, the smell of cornbread and baked beans. Anna wore a soft blue dress. Caleb stood beside her like a silent pillar of calm. But as the evening wore on, the stares became harder to ignore. She heard them again. Can't believe he brought her here. He was married to Sarah. That woman was Grace. This one, from the internet. It's just sad, really. Anna stood frozen by the lemonade table, heart pounding in her ears. And then, desperate women always find lonely men. The voice was sharp. A woman in her 50s. Sarah's cousin, maybe. Her eyes were flint. Anna turned to leave. But Caleb stepped in front of her. The reckoning. I won't let you do this, he said loudly, voice cutting through the chatter like a blade. The room fell silent. You want to judge her? Judge me. Because I invited her into my home. Because I watched her rebuild herself from nothing. Because she's stronger than anyone in this damn room. Someone cleared their throat awkwardly. Others looked away. Caleb wasn't done. She's not a mail-order bride to me. She's not some foreigner. She's Anna. And if any of you have a problem with that, say it to me. No one did. The aftermath. They drove home in silence. When they reached the porch, Anna turned to him, eyes shining. Why did you do that? Because I won't let anyone shame you for surviving. She stepped forward slowly. You didn't have to. I wanted to. Then, finally, for the first time since she arrived, she kissed him. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was steady, certain, soft as sunrise. Later that night, they sat on the porch, legs touching, hands intertwined. Anna looked out at the fields, at the stars above the barn. I thought I had to earn love, she said. Prove myself. Be young enough. Pretty enough. American enough. Caleb squeezed her hand. You don't have to be anything but you. A letter arrives. The next morning, an envelope was waiting in the mailbox. Anna opened it slowly. Inside was a handwritten note. Anna, I was wrong to speak about you the way I did. I didn't understand. But I saw you that night. I saw the way Caleb looked at you. And I realized I was jealous. Of your strength. Of your second chance. I'm sorry. Mary. Anna folded the letter quietly and placed it in the drawer beside her bed. Forgiveness, too, was blooming. The reckoning season ends. By midsummer, people stopped whispering. Some even started greeting her with smiles. Children asked her name. Neighbors asked for help with gardens and canning and recipes. Anna still had scars, but they didn't define her. And love, real love, was no longer a question. It was a promise. Love does not erase who you are. The right love writes your name beside theirs, not over it. August. The fields were golden now. The horses lazed in long grass. The Montana sky hung high and cloudless above the ranch, endless as a prayer. Anna had lived here for 9 months, but felt like a lifetime, or maybe the beginning of one. The whispers had quieted. The shame had softened. The woman who once stood alone at an airport in America, lost, judged, invisible, was gone. Anna had become someone else. No, she had become herself. A proposal of sorts. It was just after supper. The table was cleared, the windows open. Caleb sat with his elbows on the counter, watching her dry a dish with slow, quiet movements. Then he said it. "I've been thinking." She paused, turned. "I don't want to just be the man who stood up for you at a potluck. I want to be the man who wakes up beside you every morning, who builds something with you, something real." Her hand stilled. "And if you'd let me," he continued, voice hushed, "I'd like to put your name on the deed to this place. On the mailbox. On the front door." She stared at him, the dish towel clutched in her hand like a lifeline. "I'm not asking for a wedding," he added, "unless that's what you want. I just want to make sure you never feel disposable again." Anna's silence. She didn't answer that night. Not because she didn't love him. She did, fiercely, without hesitation. But for the first time, she realized she had a choice. Not just between men, but between lives. She wasn't the woman who had to beg to be chosen anymore. She was the woman who had to choose herself. The journey to the hills. The next morning, she took the old truck and drove to the high ridge that overlooked the entire valley. She brought with her a box, the old one Caleb had given her, now filled with letters she'd written, tears she'd cried, names she had worn and shed. There, under the open sky, she lit a small fire and read each letter aloud before dropping it into the flames. A goodbye to her mother. A goodbye to the girl who thought beauty was youth. A goodbye to the shame. The wind scattered the ashes across the hills. Back home. That evening, she walked into the barn where Caleb was working and said 3 words. "Paint the door." He looked up. "What?" She smiled. "You asked if I wanted my name on it. Let's paint it." The door. They painted it together. A warm, honey-stained finish, smooth and slow, like a ritual. When it dried, she carved her name beneath his. Caleb and Anna Whitaker. No ceremony, no audience, just the hum of cicadas and 2 hearts that had finally found home. 1 year later, Anna stood on the porch, a mug of coffee in hand, watching the horizon. The ranch was blooming again. Their ranch. She had started a small business selling handmade soaps and oils. Ashes and honey, she called it. Locals loved it. Orders trickled in from towns over. She taught classes at the community center. And every few weeks, she received letters from women who had heard her story and written, "You helped me believe again." Anna always wrote back. Final scene. One crisp fall morning, a young woman arrived at the ranch gate. Nervous, hopeful. She looked like Anna had once looked. Anna opened the door. "You're the one they said could help me?" Anna smiled, stepping aside. "Come in. Let's talk." The door closed behind them. The name etched on the wood gleamed in the light. Epilogue, a voiceover for YouTube. "They told me I was too old, too late, too broken. But healing doesn't follow a clock. And love? Real love doesn't knock. It walks through the back door, rolls up its sleeves, and says, 'Let's build a life.'" Anna Whitaker,